find a common position. So whole negotiation was among us. Then the easy part was to go and deliver it to Milosevic. You have to be practical. It's not a theoretical exercise. And I had to do this argumentation in our negotiations. I think President Yeltsin had decided that they will seriously try to find a solution. And these were the instructions that Mr. Chernomyrdin had. He was not terribly popular after this because the traditional relations between Moscow and Belgrade were well known. I explained, I read the 10 commandments that said that you have to withdraw, do this, that, and that, and then certain things will follow. Then he said, can we make any improvements into this? And I said, unfortunately not. This is as good as we have been able to come. So it's a question now whether you can accept this. I have no authority to negotiate, neither does Mr. Chernomyrdin. I answered questions, why this formulation, why that formulation, and then he said that we will take this to the parliament. And he kindly offered us the opportunity to have a dinner together, but I declined. First of all, I was tired because we had been up nearly the whole night before negotiating. But then also I said it would be more useful if he can use the time to see his colleagues and talk to the government and all the elements in a society, and that happened. He used the time in the evening to do that. And we had our own private dinner with my team, and then we went to see them early the following day. And that's how it went. Next morning he said that the government and parliament have approved this.
This story is not over yet, but there's no question that this story already has some heroes, and one of those heroes is Martti Ahtisaari.
You need realism because you have to analyze what the problem actually is. And you have to be flexible when it's required. I think you also have to be courageous because you sometimes have to be very straightforward with the parties that you deal with. This was an easy task for me. I was the one who used my practical experience to say what works and what doesn't work. For instance, what should be the composition of the peacekeeping force? It couldn't be simply a list of favorite countries that are politically acceptable. It had to be countries who could do the job and who could send a message that would facilitate actually the return of Albanians back. So we needed Americans, we needed Brits, we needed French, we needed Germans. Had these countries stayed out, not a single Albanian would have dared to come back. I sometimes say that if I ever would write my memoirs, I think that James Bond would fade of envy, because there were elements of that actually in the whole way how we were transported from one, changing cars, finally landing somewhere. I don't have a clue where we were. It was an interesting exercise. It perhaps made me understand how complicated the process was. I remember asking one of our interlocutors in the first meeting, and how long do you think that this assignment will take? And I was told that this problem has been with them for 800 years, that you can make your pick. First of all, we had to get some sort of understanding with Sinn Féin and IRA how we could carry out this inspection. The agreement concerned only Cyril and myself. So we couldn't take, for instance, military advisors with us. And it took a number of meetings before we actually could start doing what we were supposed to be doing. We had a first meeting in London, then we met in continental Europe, in different places. And finally we had an understanding how we do this. And we went for the first one. We were flown from Paris to Dublin, and then from there to a safe house. And then next morning we were taken in a very complicated arrangement. I sometimes describe that our role was to keep the patient in intensive care for that year, and then return the patient back to the general ward. Because there was then a time when IRA made a statement saying that they are prepared to deal again with the decommissioning commission, whose task it was to do these things. And we passed a press statement immediately the following day saying that, thank you, we had done our bit, and let everybody know that if we are needed, they know where to get hold of us. It was a small, I would say a small thing for us to do in the overall process, but important in the sense that my impression after that was that I think the armed struggle is over, and it's a question how you come out of that mode. And it has taken time, but I think there is a clear progress.
Täytyy katsoa, mikä meidän arvio siitä tilanteesta loppujen lopuksi on. Ja siinä joutuu tietysti pohtimaan hyvinkin vaikeita kysymyksiä, että onko siellä toimintaedellytyksiä lainkaan.
Secretary General asked me after the attack on the Canal Hotel, which was a UN headquarters, which was attacked by a car bomb so that well over 20 of our colleagues died there. He wanted me to form a small team and go and see what went wrong with our security arrangements. And I did that. We worked for a month, produced a report, visited Iraq, visited Amman, talked to those who had come out of Iraq after that, who had been hurt in that, both local staff and foreigners. And we came with a very critical report, which led to then certain decisions in the Secretariat. Situation now is totally different, I think. There's a great awareness of security threats in today's world. The UN emblem and UN flag is not protecting UN personnel anymore, like it used to do. We are living in a much more dangerous world. That assignment was perhaps my saddest one, because I could see that many things could have been done better. And perhaps the whole attack could have been prevented. Not very much needed to be done to protect that building in a more professional manner, but it was not done properly.
History does not happen, but is made. We are here to try to make history, a history of peace.
There was a countryman of mine, Juha Christensen, who had worked in the 80s in Indonesia, who wanted